Well, good morning, colleagues, and welcome to this meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. Before we start, I'm just going to invite Lisa to share, basically for the people online, the names of the people present in the chamber. We thought that might be useful. So if you would do that for us, Lisa.
Thank you, Chair. So good morning, everybody. So just to confirm, in the room, we've got Chair Brian Harvey, Vice Chair Alan Rainford, we have lay member Claire Blanchard, Councillor Ellis, we have Councillor Mullin, Councillor Shellcross. Online, we have Councillor Parkhurst and Councillor Teresa Carberry. And we have the leader, Dave Hughes, is in the room. Also in the room is Cabinet Member Paul Johnson, Cabinet Member Ted Palmer, and Cabinet Member Linda Thomas. And also officers are, we have Audit Wales, Mike Whiteley, and then officers Gary Ferguson, Chris Taylor, Rebecca Pritchard. Online, we've got Steve Goodrum and myself, Lisa Brownville.
Thank you very much. And a welcome to Councillor McEwen, who's observing today. I think that's everyone included in the rundown, so we all know where we are. Can we move on to item 1 on the agenda, which is apologies. We've had apologies from the Chief Executive and the Chief Officer Governance. Are there any other apologies? Councillor Carberry.
I'm afraid, Chair, I will have to leave at 12 o'clock today.
Okay, thank you very much. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Fine. Let's move now to item 3 on the agenda, minutes of the meeting held on the 25th of September 2025. Can we go through, first of all, for questions of accuracy? On page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6. There are no questions for accuracy or comments. Could I ask, therefore, for a mover and a seconder? Yes. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. Let's move on then to the main item on the agenda, agenda 4, which is the statement of accounts 24-25. I'll hand over to Gary and to Chris.
Thanks, Chair. Morning, everybody. So members will recall that we did bring the draft accounts for the 2024-25 financial year to this committee back in July. The audit is now substantially complete, and the auditor's opinion on the draft account is attached to your papers as Appendix 2, and we'll hand over to Audit Wales colleagues in just a moment. However, firstly, I think it is important to recognise the efforts of the finance team and many other colleagues across the whole council in bringing together this comprehensive and complex document. It is a mammoth task over a number of months. Particularly thanks needs to go to Chris and Becky, who are here this morning, and their team, who have brought all this together and within the national deadlines, which hasn't been the case for all councils. I'd also like to pass on my thanks to colleagues from Audit Wales, Mr Mike Whiteley, Simon Monkhouse and the team, who have undertaken the audit in a professional and timely manner. We have worked together on a hybrid basis with a combination of time set aside in the office and other issues being dealt with through online interaction, which I think has worked really well. On the accounts themselves, I won't steal the thunder of Audit Wales, but sufficient to say that I am really pleased with the outcome, and I think it's a very positive report. As you would expect in an organisation this size, there were some amendments identified that needed correction, and they've all been incorporated into the final document that's attached to your papers. Therefore, this hopefully provides stakeholders with good assurance that the accounts is an accurate record of our overall financial position as we move into more detailed budget planning for 2026-27 and beyond. So perhaps at that point, Chair, I'll just hand over to Mr Mike Whiteley, who will present the opinion on our accounts.
Before we do that, Mike, can I just ask whether there are any questions specifically on the statement of accounts? Alan.
I've got a couple of questions.
On the accounts?
On the accounts themselves, yeah, okay. So there are a couple of, as Gary's alluded to, a couple of corrections that have been made, mostly minor presentational changes. I thought it would help us to understand some of the corrections relating to note 8 on property, plant and equipment, and also possibly on note 40, if you were to explain to us again the complexity of implementing IFRS 16, which related to these right of use assets. I know that you did that back in July, but I think if you could again talk to us about the work, the very complex work you've had to do to comply with that accounting standard, and link it into maybe the changes that you've made in the accounts. Is that okay? Is that clear? And the other part, the other correction really, or the other linked question was, there's also an amendment relating to the note on related parties. Again, I couldn't quite see what the changes were that were made in note 28. So maybe you could just explain what wording you've added or taken out. And I guess linked to that is, perhaps you could just briefly outline the process for us in terms of how you capture details in related parties, and whether you think in the light of the amendments, whether you might need to tweak that process in future years. Okay, so there's 2 questions there. Thanks.
Perhaps we just have Chris, who's obviously lived and breathed with this issue, so we probably get a more comprehensive response from Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So yeah, just in terms of the implementation by IFRS 16, obviously it's been a bit of a mammoth task. It's been going on for, it's been pushed back a few years in terms of the code coming in. So that has given us some time to prepare in terms of gathering data. So I suppose the first step was to identify all our leases that we have across the council. So the officer who dealt with this has been in constant contact with a number of different teams. So we've been liaising with our valuation and estates team, our legal team for any leases we may hold there. I think a big area where there are leases usually has been schools, but kind of smaller levels, in terms of photocopies and stuff like that. So we've had a lot of engagement with our school teams, and we've emailed individually the schools as each year in terms of preparation of it, and it's been pretty constant really. We regularly have special practitioner groups in terms of build up to the accounts with our lead accountants, and that's been on the agenda for a number of years to make sure everyone's aware of it, what's required. Again, we've done a lot of detail analysis of our general ledger to make sure we've picked up all leases. So that's a lot of work's got in there. And again, once we know and have identified them, we need to make sure we calculate that lease liability. So we've put together cost models for each of the leases to find out what, based on how many years we've got and what the costs are each year. So there's a process of doing those models for each of those leases, which is not an insignificant amount there. So a lot of work's gone into preparing that. So I suppose once we've identified it and got the calculations in terms of our lease assets and liabilities, the next step was to make sure we add that onto our asset register. So then there was a task of entering them, setting up codes, running it through the asset register, and then reviewing the outcome of that against our expectation, well, again, as the final check, and then processing those changes through ledger, and doing that analysis as we go along. So in terms of the prep, I think we did a lot there, and to be fair, the code guidance in terms of preparation was really good. I suppose where the changes is come from is around the presentation of the note and the opening balances in particular. The guidance in terms of what we got wasn't really very detailed in how we should disclose the changes in the accounts. So we were probably a bit inconsistent around how we showed it in our opening balances. I mean, all the guidance said that ultimately we should just adjust the opening balance, which we did. But in hindsight, we probably were a bit inconsistent, and it could have been clearer. I mean, all in discussions with Audit Wales colleagues, we decided to amend it to show the carry forward from previous years, the adjustment, and then to give a revised opening balance. So that was the process through that. I mean, I think, and I'm sure Mike will touch on it, I think because the guidance wasn't clear, we possibly could have left it as it was, but we decided that it'd be clearer and more transparent for the user to show that change. Just in relation to the related parties, so yeah, each year, usually at the start of the calendar year, we would share a related parties transaction declaration form with all to all members of the chief officer team and the chief executive, in line with the code and guidance, to get those forms. And when we do get them back, we do cross-reference it with the register of interest that the council holds, and we also do a comparison to the previous year in terms of what members have put on in case there's something missed. Obviously, with this year, there was a change in the officer form where there wasn't a declaration in terms of a role held as a director. So that had an impact on the accounts, that we had to include the transaction for that company, which was a 9k change to the note. And then there was 2 members who were on the boards of some of our subsidiaries. We'd already included Newith on there, but New Homes hadn't, so we had to introduce the transactions for New Homes, so they were the changes. But in terms of going forward, I think when we send the forms out, maybe we just make our communications a bit clearer in terms of what's required to go on there. And again, with our own subsidiaries, we shouldn't be missing the board members on there. So I think our steps we'll add into the process is to liaise with our finance teams who look after our commercial services and get updated board member lists to make sure we can add an extra layer of cross-referencing in there as well. So I think hopefully that will eliminate that going forward.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other hands up. So Mike, come to you now for the second part of the presentation.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, members. I'm happy to present our audit of accounts report to you this morning, which is a really positive report. I think Gary summarised it well. The statement of accounts is a huge document, as I'm sure you're aware, and is very complicated. I think to come out of that process following the audit with so few amendments is a significant achievement. So I think the council should be congratulated on that. I'd like to pass on my thanks to Gary, Chris, Becky, and the wider teams as well for their cooperation throughout the audit. I think it makes it go really smoothly. We're really grateful for that, and hopefully we can continue that in the future. But that works really well. The process has run well this year. Gary mentioned the audit is substantially complete, just to provide that assurance that all of the audit work is complete. It's just that we can't say it's finally complete until the Auditor General signs, who's hopefully going to sign Friday lunchtime. You may notice a new format to our report this year. For those members who've not seen it before, hopefully this is a bit more of a user-friendly template that we've got now. I put a lot of work into this year. And I think page 5 is the kind of the killer page for all of the useful information you need to know. In that, we intend to issue an unqualified opinion, which means we've got a clean bill of health. There are no significant matters to report to members this morning prior to the approval of the accounts. There are no uncorrected misstatements we wish to draw to your attention. And to confirm that we're aiming to certify on Friday, which is ahead of the statutory deadline of the 31st of October. Moving on to page 7 of our report, the audit of groups is probably just worth touching on that. That was a new or revised auditing standard this year, which put additional responsibilities on Audit Wales as group auditors for the council's group accounts, to incorporate in the subsidiaries. So we had to engage in more detail with the component auditors and ask them to perform work on our behalf as the most efficient way to get the assurance over the group balances. And just to confirm that the component auditors were really helpful and timely with their responses. No issues with the work they carried out. We got the required assurances. I'm just grateful as well to colleagues at the council who facilitated that and just moved that process out for us. So that was a risk, and we've got it as a risk kind of in a bit. But the component auditors were very helpful. Appendix 1 on page 11. This is another new section that we brought into this report this year, where we bring forward the risks from our audit plan, which we brought to you in April, outline the work done and the outcome of that work as well. So there are some risks that you'll see in our audit plans every year due to the complexity of the council's accounts, such as around estimates, asset valuations, pension liabilities, and so on. So I thought maybe I'd touch on this morning just some of those risks that are perhaps specific to this year, but obviously happy to take any questions on any of those after. So on page 12, we had the establishment of the new company, Flintshire Leisure and Libraries Limited. So this was a mid-year establishment of the new company. So we just outlined our risks there around completeness of opening balances, the council's assessment of how it would account for it within the group accounts, review of the consolidation process given it's a new company, and to establish whether we need to do any work on any new IT systems that have been established. Happy to report no issues from any of that work. The well-established process that the council has for incorporating its subsidiaries' financial information into the accounts was just kind of transferred over to this one. So we had a good template there to begin with. Just happy to report no issues arising from that. Chris and Gary have both spoken about IFRS 16. So moving on to page 15 of our report. I think it's worth just reflecting that the council did a really good job here. While we do have a few amendments in the appendix there, it was a really comprehensive and well done process. So no issues with the base calculations, no issues with how the liabilities have been estimated, the discount rates used. All that was really thoroughly well done and documented. That's a huge achievement. As Chris said, the sit for guidance on perhaps the finer detail of how those gets presented in the accounts wasn't quite there. But as I've come to expect, it was discussed, agreed, and those changes were actioned straight away. No issues. So I just wanted to put that on record that it was a significant achievement. We did have some accounts across Wales that were presented to us as draft accounts without any IFRS 16 in at all. That happened in more than one place. So Flintshire took the bull by the horns and tackled that straight away, which was fantastic. And then finally, on page 18, just to touch on the data centre move. So again, this is a 24-25 issue with the move from County Hall to T-Dewi Sant. A really good news story there. I think our IT also used the word textbook in her assessment of how that data move had gone, and just tried to bullet point some of the good practice there that she identified in that work. And it's always nice to be able to provide that positive feedback as well. Appendix 2 on page 19. I think Chris has probably covered off the amendments there, but I suppose just to add my 2 pence on the related parties, just to provide that confirmation, we have no concerns over the robustness of the processes and arrangements for identifying and declaring those related parties. I think in all instances, those kind of declarations of interest have been completed and these relationships have been declared. It was just that perhaps we hadn't quite picked them up when the accounts were pulled together and that note was pulled together. So we have no concerns over that process. I think it's a good, strong process, as Chris outlined, and it was just the final bit around getting those disclosures in the accounts. Our proposed audit report is on Appendix 3. I won't read through that in detail, but as I've already outlined, that's a clean audit opinion, no issues to flag before members this morning. And then we've got our letter of representation, which is elsewhere on the agenda as well, in Appendix 4. That's all I wanted to say, Chair, but happy to take any questions on any aspect of the report.
Thank you very much, Mike. Any questions? Alan?
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Mike. I also found the audit report much clearer and readable compared to previous years, so thanks for that. Thanks for your glowing words about the performance of the Flintshire County Council team. I think they need to be highly commended. You use words like huge achievement and significant achievement. So I think they've done a fantastic job in terms of producing the accounts, which has so few errors or incorrect figures included. Are you able to set that sort of achievement in some sort of context for us? I know that you don't produce league tables of authorities across Wales, but are you able to say whether Flintshire is top of the tree potentially, or amongst, if not the premier authority when it comes to producing clean statements of accounts, good statements of accounts?
Thanks, Alan. Yeah, you're quite right. We don't have a league table. I don't know how other councils are performing across certainly North Wales or the rest of Wales. But I've kind of I've got some statistics maybe just to set Flintshire performance in a bit of context, if that would be helpful. So for the local governments, I'm reading this, so I do apologise. For the local government sector, just 23 of the 40 sets of accounts were received by the 30th of June deadline. So Flintshire were clearly in that category of doing that. And then as of the 30th of September, we'd only received 32. So the sector is clearly kind of challenged in achieving these deadlines. So I think the fact that Flintshire have done so, met those deadlines, and produced such a high quality set of accounts really does speak volumes around the processes and arrangements that Flintshire have got in place to produce the accounts. But in terms of top of the tree league table, I can't provide a view on that, Alan, I'm afraid.
Thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments? Yeah, Councillor Parkhurst, your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Gary and team, for an excellent set of documents and all the hard work you've done. Just one question on the Audit Wales report. It's page 174 in our pack, but it's page 16 in terms of the Audit Wales document, and it's regarding the Renting Homes Wales Act and electrical safety certificates. This, I imagine, is sort of hot off the press in the sense that you say that you have examined the High Court judgment issued, this month. So that sounds like it's very, recent. And you said that there is no impact on the financial statements. Can you confirm or otherwise that there therefore is no further risk to us, or is that something which is still in the melting pot?
Thank you, Councillor Parkhurst. I'm no legal expert. I just want that on record by any means. As you say, it was hot off the press early October was the High Court judgment, which for those counterclaims that were submitted against the original judgment in November 24, the High Court decided that there was no case to answer. Whether there is any scope for any subsequent re-review or counterclaim of that, I'm not sure. The council still has the contingent liability disclosure in the accounts. So from an audit perspective, that disclosure is sufficient under IAS 37 to capture this issue. So it's been properly assessed and disclosed. But in terms of whether there is any subsequent mileage in this whole legal process, I couldn't comment, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Healy, did you have your hand up?
I will merely just, I think from the members' perspective, it's important for us to really applaud what the Flintshire team have done here, because it's, I know Gary described it as a mammoth task, and you can see just by looking at the massive documentation, the way in which they've had to bring so much together. And obviously, although there's no league table as far as Audit Wales is concerned, I think we can be really pleased with, very much so, with what our team has done. So thank you.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Johnson.
I've got it there. Right, thank you, Chair. I'm delighted to receive these reports. That the response of the committee, I think, has been very, very positive. So I think it's an amazing thing to go and have, to be honest. I'm sure quite a lot of councils this would not be the case, but quite clearly, I think this year's report demonstrates the financial discipline and the transparency we've got in very, very challenging circumstances. It shows that despite sustained cost pressures across social care, education and infrastructure, we still retained a balanced budget through prudent management and timely decisions taken by cabinet officers and members. I think it's always worth pointing out here that the number of officers who pulled this together are such a small team. And I always find it very strange that when I'm sat around the cabinet table with the members there, the finance team is by far the smallest. And every time they do things, I'm absolutely amazed at how well things are done. I mean, you're just looking at the three of the team here, but there's a whole little network of portfolio accountants who'll be filling all these things in and contributing. So for those members of the team who are not here today, but are clearly part of it, I think we should extend our thanks as well. In terms of the Auditor General, as I said, obviously provides welcome assurance and to confirm that our accounts give a true and fair account of our position, and that our governance arrangements remain robust, and I value that very highly indeed. He commends the continuing improvement in the quality and timeliness of our financial reporting, and again, I think it's important to recognise we have worked hard to strengthen this year on year. Just in terms of the way, I think it's probably worth noting that I think one of the strengths of Audit Wales and the process we have for auditing local government's accounts in Wales is something, again, we should be proud of. It's a good system. I mean, I noticed that we may suddenly throw our hands and say, why did Audit Wales go and do this? Or why have Audit Wales gone and said that? But it's a very robust system. And there's been no talk, I've heard nothing about saying, get rid of Audit Wales, go and change how things are done. As I noticed that in England, there have been things are not as good as they are here by any means. And there was a statement in December that they were going to overhaul the current local audit system in England because of its weaknesses. So to me, that goes and says what the Audit Wales and the Auditor General's comments about us, it gives it an extra validity because of the strength of the service we've got here compared to elsewhere. So I think it's important to say that the strengths of this report are very clear. There's accurate accounts, there's strong internal controls, effective scrutiny, and an improving record of delivering within the resources available. The audit opinion from the Auditor General reinforces the professionalism of our financial team and the Council's commitment to the sound stewardship of our public funds. And I know that we might have a couple of months off, but we'll have the budget and I will go through this for next year. And I'm absolutely convinced that we all know it's going to be the same quality that's coming forward next year from the team. So a massive thanks from myself and the Cabinet.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't see any other hands up. Councillor Carberry, you made a statement at our pre-meeting, which I'm going to invite you to share now, because that is really echoing the very positive comments that have been made already and echoing the thoughts of all committee members. Would you like to share what you said at the pre-meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to say how impressed I was with the report, and I really would like to thank all the members of the portfolio that were involved in putting the report together. I mean, I understood it, and it was comprehensive to me, and the vast amount of work that has gone into producing it cannot be understated. And I just wanted to say a huge thank you.
Thank you very much. You said you had to go at 12 o'clock, and it's now 10:30, and we're coming to the close of the meeting. So you can pour yourself a long cup of coffee before you need to go off. Meanwhile, we've got to agree the recommendations on page 7, and there are 3 of them. Members are requested to consider the Audit Wales report, audit of the financial statements for 24-25 for Flintshire County Council, which we've done. We're then requested to approve the final version of the statement of accounts following consideration of the Audit Wales report. And thirdly, we're requested to approve the letter of representation. Could I please have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Mullin and Councillor Parkhurst. All those in favour, please show. Thank you very much indeed. And at 10:30, I think that concludes the business of this meeting. Thank you all so much for attending, and look forward to our next General Governance and Audit Committee in November. Thank you very much.